Welcome to Atlas Core Learns From, and today we're joined by Tulaine Montgomery. She's the co-CEO at New Profit, a venture philanthropy organization that backs visionary leaders who are scaling innovation and transforming the US's most important and, at times, inequitable systems. She's played central leadership roles in the launch and expansion of several social enterprises domestically and globally, focusing her global efforts on East Africa and the Caribbean. She's also been the founder and president of New Resources Strategies. She's been a vice president of community impact at United Way, Massachusetts. She's also an accomplished cellist and writer, and she has written and produced 4 original plays. But today, Tulaine, we're going to focus on talent and potential, and I'm really curious to learn from you of all of your teams, the teams you've built, the enterprises you've invested in. How do you spot talent? What is that special sauce, the anecdote that really makes it stand out to you?
I feel like there's going to be a theme across these conversations that you're hosting, because I would say when I think about the talent that I've had the privilege of working with over the years, and certainly today in my work at New Profit, that a consistent theme has been humility, right? And has been humility showing up as curiosity and adaptability. And I know that you've heard that before from some other guests. And the reason I'm repeating it is because it's the truth. It's simply true. You know, I could try to come up with something different for the sake of being different, but it is actually probably worth repeating. It bears repeating that, you know, particularly in the social impact space, where, you know, I believe that part of what we're working to create is something that is in some cases counterculture. You know, there's such a framework, a mental model out in the world about charity, right? And charity has very problematic origins. You know, charity in many cases requires a very hierarchical view of value and capability. And so those of us who are in the social impact space, who are actually interested in transformation and equity and sustainability and humane practices, like those of us who are actually in it for reasons that I consider the right reasons, my judgment, but I do stand by it. You know, we actually are moving miles and miles and miles away from anything that sort of reeks of charity, kind of manifest destiny stories. Like, we actually believe that the genius resides in community, in constituents, right? That people who we in the social impact space want to support and serve, that they actually have the expertise that we need. And so based on that belief and that value, the people, the talent, the people who are able to show up and, you know, be about the business of doing something that is impactful and significant and good, they're humble, they're curious, and they are able to adapt. You know, they're able to recognize that what I got taught in that classroom, some pieces of it may be relevant, but it doesn't actually mean that I have the answer. And hey, guess what? If I had the answer 1 year, context may shift and the answer may need to evolve. And the only way I'll know what evolutions are required is if I'm actively listening to the people whom I'm partnering with to enable change. So that curiosity and humility is everything.
I appreciate that theme coming through so strongly, and knowing that you're connected to some of the other people that I've already interviewed. Is there a specific anecdote when you've spotted that genius with humility and curiosity?
Absolutely. I mean, there's many. I can even offer one from my own career early on, but I'll go ahead and tell the story. When I was part of the founding leadership team for something in the U.S. called Citizen Schools, a program that works on apprenticeship models and out-of-school time to expand not only the academic outcomes but the sort of social, emotional development of young people. So anyway, it was a group of us. Incredible folks, Eric Schwartz, Ned Reimer, incredible group of colleagues, Stephanie Davalos, John Werner, Anita Price. Just lifting their names up makes me feel good. But my point is that I went from that position, from doing the same job as people who had become close friends. We were all running program sites, to having the role of providing oversight and supervision to a group of people whom were close friends. You know, I went from being a site director to a program director for an emerging enterprise. And what I learned in that situation, man, let me tell you, I started that work creating what I call super memos, right? I was like, I'm just going to write down everything that I want this team to do. I'm going to create, have reference points and footnotes and graphics. And, I would just generate these super memos and give them out and just expect that there would be a set of activities and behaviors that were aligned with what I wanted. But, based on what I just said, what do you think happened when I distributed these super memos? What do you think happened? If you had to guess.
The readership was not too high.
That's right. Low readership and low follow-up activity and an increase in collaborative resentment. All those things happen. So what a mentor and teacher and friend of mine, Ned Reimer, shout out to Ned Reimer if you're listening. What Ned said to me, he said, listen, Tulaine, here's the thing. Your job as a manager and a colleague is to enable people to have the information and resource they need to get work done in a way that enables the mission of this organization. And if what you're doing isn't enabling that result, then what you're doing isn't working, and it's up to you to change. Because as you can imagine, my first inclination was to assign blame, outside of myself. I wrote the super memo. What else do you want? It's about, something that someone else should have done. No, it was the responsibility actually resided within me. So in that moment, I had to gain some humility. I had to adapt and I had to learn about the power of taking responsibility. I think I would say that the additional trait or characteristic that is really important for talent, particularly in our space, in our sector, is the willingness and capability to take responsibility. What I learned in that anecdote is not only humility, but I learned that it's up to me to be responsible for what I am co-creating around me. It's up to me to be humble enough to learn if what I'm doing is meeting the mark or missing the mark. So I would say, in addition to curiosity and humility, which your listeners have heard before, I would add the capacity to take responsibility.
And that's such a spot-on answer that it already addresses my next question and the advice you would give to young talent, especially the global community that we're trying to nurture as young leaders. That responsibility and taking responsibility, in addition to developing humility and curiosity, is that what you would advise?
I think that's the winning formula. I really do. And I just want to say, it sounds nice. They're pretty words, but it can feel counterculture. Many of us, particularly when we're early in our careers, I certainly was part of this as well. We're taught that the way to, win, put air quotes up for the word win, the way to win is to show your differentiated value add, to sort of demonstrate, I one time got coaching early in my career. Anytime you're in a meeting, make sure you say at least 3 smart things. I now think that that's awful advice. But, my point is that, that's the training, that's the messaging. You got to show and prove, show and prove. The challenge with show and prove as your engine, as your fuel, is that when you're busy showing and proving, you're not doing a lot of listening and learning, right? And so I think that it's important advice for folks early in their career to practice humility, to be curious, and to take responsibility, because it's actually counterculture. But what I found is that the people who have been able to build just brilliant pathways for themselves professionally, the people who I have learned have been able to have incredible impact and build legacy in fairly short time periods. Those are the people who were not focused mostly on showing how brilliant and great and differentiated they were. They're the people who were really focused on understanding the context they were in, the impact they were having, and the assets that existed in the community or in the system or on the issue that they want to in some way impact. So that means it's people who, if they were working on criminal justice reform, they were people who had really taken the time to understand the visible and hidden aspects of that system. If it's people who were addressing, food deserts and food apartheid in low-income communities, it's people who really took the time to understand the impact of the current structure before proposing what the solutions needed to be. Do you see what I'm saying? It's people who really combine those traits of curiosity and humility and responsibility with a way of behaving that wasn't really about highlighting themselves all the time. And I do think in many cases, younger folks are advised and coached to make sure that you always are the most visible piece. I'm not saying hide, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying that you actually end up having more sustainable visibility if your focus is not visibility.
And it really adds to something another interviewee said, instead of proving and showing, try to add actual value to
That's
the
right.
organization.
That's right.
So my last question is focused on something that would make people smile if they found out about what you have experienced or done. The fun fact at Atlas Corp.
Yeah, the fun fact. I love that you have that question, and I had to think about it. And so I guess what I'll share, fun facts. There's fun facts for different audiences. The fun fact I will share for this audience is that I have been, for most of my life, a fan of comedy. I used to, when I was a little girl, sneak and listen to my parents' comedy albums, Richard Pryor and the like, which at the time I, of course, had no business listening to. That's why I was sneaking. But it just gives you a sense of how deep this love for comedy is for me. So one fun fact for me is that I actually do comedy improv and write comedy. And, am a comedian of sorts, as a hobby and a love. I do it for the culture. So I would not call myself like a money earning comedian, no, but I absolutely am someone who studies and writes and enjoys comedy.
So then I'm really curious, given that we're both in the DC area, where would I see you next?
Oh man, you may not ever see me. You get to, as I try to bring comedy into the way I live my life. So you'll get to see my comedy the next time we have a conversation. You might see something I write. I'm working on that, but it's early days and I'm in it for the culture. I just love comedy. I think comedy, like music, is one of the spaces where we human beings can most powerfully connect around meaningful things that can sometimes seem tough. But comedy kind of creates a way that we can connect around difficult but important issues. So, no stand-up gigs coming up in the foreseeable future, but my love of comedy is real.
Tulaine, I really appreciate your time, advice, and I look forward to experiencing that comedy again soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a pleasure.
You.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing.